Hey everybody, I recently had the honor of speaking at the Making Connections conference hosted by Team Luke Hope for Minds with Tim Siegel and his amazing team down in Austin, Texas, an incredible organization serving families navigating pediatric brain injury and traumatic brain injuries. We were truly grateful to be a part of that. I loved my time teaching and talking. I especially, as always, most loved my time afterwards, after I came off the stage thing there. Put the PowerPoint down and just got to sit knee to knee with so many parents and kids. It was such an incredible experience. Definitely put it on your calendar to make this conference, especially if your family, yourself are in the brain injury world. It's a must-make conference. We wanted the message there to reach even further across the world, so we thought that our podcast community would really love to nerd out with us, as I did down there, and that's why I'm sharing this with you today. We're talking about the kind of pediatric brain injury that truly does turn life upside down for families: seizures, significant developmental delays, feeding and breathing struggles, sensory overwhelm, paralysis, chronic illness, and just a level of challenges that impact nearly, if not every part of daily life for these families. Meaning, when we can get into their nervous system and start to make some changes to function and regulation, get into the vagus nerve, and get the brain and the body to work better, goodness gracious, can we vastly improve those so many daily life struggles. And honestly, it's really personal for me too. It's the world my son Oliver lived in right out of the gates. His birth trauma, seizures, and early neurological brain injury changed the course of his life and mine. And that experience is why I've spent the last 2 decades studying how early neurological brainstem and brain injury happens, how it affects everything, and most importantly, how healing and transformation is possible. And I want families to know this: you are 1,000% not alone. We see so many incredible kiddos and families in our PX Docs offices every single week. Kids with traumatic brain injuries, traumatic births, stroke, hypoxic brain injuries and events, severe seizures, complex chronic health challenges, you name it, we see it, we serve, we're ready, we love you. This is what we're trained and built to do. That's what this podcast is for. That's what this platform is for. That's the tip of our spear that God has called us to say, hey, get out into the world and serve all kids and families, and especially serve these kids and families. And that's just simply what we do. What we know is these kids and these families and these parents and their siblings and their caretakers and their providers are the most brave, resilient, unbelievably strong, and they've taught us more about neuroplasticity, healing, hope, perseverance, grit, community than any textbook or certification ever could. In this presentation, I break down what actually happens inside the brain and the body during that early injury, why those effects spread into so many other areas and systems of that child's life, and why so many families are left with more labels but not real answers and significant shifts and changes. If you're raising a child with a significant neurological or brain injury, or if you're overwhelmed by therapies, hospitals, stem cells, PT, neurointensive, other sort of programs, and you've just wondered what is the best first path forward, this episode is for you. There is clarity, there is hope, and there is a way forward. Let's dive into this one. Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. I want to start, most importantly, farm kid from Iowa. The boots are comfortable, but also I love that we are in a church doing this work. Some of these amazing families that know me well, that we have been blessed to serve. know that we love all about the nervous system, but God has really called us to this work. I'm going to start by sharing my son's story to kick us off into my pursuit of all this neuroscience and how neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic, which is very significantly different than regular chiropractic, kicked us off. But my whole team back home, we have a brick and mortar practice outside of Chicago. We do intensives, we do a lot of work. We have 6 docs. Then we teach other chiropractors this work, your amazing crew down here. And then we have a podcast and a platform too. So we have a team of 50 people, and I just want each of your families and each of your kids to know that we are praying every single day for your families. We know that you are right in the thick of the storm so often, and sometimes you get out of it, and then a growth spurt or something pulls you back into it, and all these different things are happening all at once. And so even though I am the lone, short, bald, bearded representation of Team PX down here in Austin, our team is praying for you guys daily, okay? And there's absolute neuroscientific research in hope, and it's an essential part of healing. And again, it doesn't say it on the slide, but if it really were to make my slides accurate, right, Mercedes, it should probably say hope answers sarcasm and help, okay? So we like to bring it a little bit light as we go nerdy. So what we titled this thing is really the thing I want you to be able to pull out of it. Because when we're fighting through traumatic brain injuries and all of the neurological sequelae that come from the different injuries and challenges our kids go through, it opens up an entire long list if we were to put it into a project management software. So I'm a full raging bull, gas pedal, sympathetic dominant person who married into organization. And so my wife makes me use like project management software just to remember what to buy from Farm and Fleet. But if we were to put everything we're working on with our kids into a to-do list, where would that to-do list stop, right? If we were to put the challenges they have, and on the other side of the challenges, which is how God made me and how I feel blessed to see the world, on the other side of the challenges are these massive opportunities for healing, for transformation, for miracles. I brought a suit coat. It's actually right down the road from you there, Mercedes, but just in case. So we'll take a picture later on and then tag my wife and she'll be like, you wore your professional doctor coat. No, I didn't. Okay. Because you need to see the t-shirt throughout this whole thing. My work uniform, it's not work, it's a calling, is just different colors of shirts that say expect miracles, experience miracles, or hope dealer. And so every time I get on a plane, people always think I'm a youth pastor. And I'm like, well, youth pastor with neurology and adjustments. So this title, though, the foundational first step in neurological healing and why sequencing matters most. Once we get into this and we share the neuroscience and we share some stories and we share action steps. So I don't want to just share stories and share information and then not send you home as families knowing, cool, what do I do next? It might feel like for a lot of you that it's going to go a different direction than you're used to going, which is how many things can we do all at once? But I've been so blessed to get down here this year. I haven't been able to make it the last couple of years. And so I'm kind of the new guy on teaching, but I'm blessed to serve a lot of your families. And one of the first things we do, which is not natural to me, it's certainly not natural to parents, and it's certainly not natural at all when our kids are struggling, is we slow down to speed up, okay? And so as I speed up and we start teaching this stuff, I want you to remember the title because it never means, hey, to get our kids to heal and go through these transformative changes, it's just going to be one singular thing. But this is what I want to speak to first, is the frustration that I really meet parents when we sit down knee to knee, or I guess we first connect on the phone or Zoom a lot of times when it's intensives. But then when we meet them, we just want everybody to know that we know where you are, where we're facing all these challenges and seeming overwhelmed by all the options. And then when we're in these incredible Facebook groups, which a lot of times are the transformative catalyst to get us to learn about conferences and doctors and products that create healing, how come this mom with this comment, that one worked, and the next comment, it didn't, but this worked, and then that didn't, right? It's this myriad of confusion where if that worked over here, then why didn't it work over here? Because the nervous system is the most complex, multifaceted, intricate nervous system, because each of our children had different mechanisms of injury, ages, health going into it. There's a lot more than I can even necessarily teach in an hour. So we chose to really get right into the crux of this issue, which is, what's the foundation? The foundation, when we look at neuroplasticity and the way God designed our children to develop, that sequence is the same healing sequence we need to use for repair and recovery. We have to go back to how brains and bodies were supposed to be built ideally, and we need to go into that to get the work done. So to let you know why God has us and me, and that word is my least favorite word in the dictionary, talking about myself. I have a podcast now, and sometimes the team will be like, hey, you went on a little bit of a rant on this one. Do you want to listen to this and see if you want to edit it out? It's the worst thing ever. Listening to your own voice on video, I just want to punch the screen and be like, why is he talking so with his hands so much? Who is this guy? Okay. But the reason that I'll try to give you a short story here. It's my miracle man, Oliver, and just like your beautiful babies, hard to tell these stories short, right? But I really want to get nerdy and neurological too. So my path as a chiropractor started very standard. I had chiropractic. I'd never said the word the first 20 years of my life. When I was 19, 20 years old, I went and shadowed a chiropractor. I always wanted to work with health. I love neuroscience. I love helping people. I am a farm kid from Iowa. Literally, grew up on a cattle and corn farm. And so I just wanted to use my hands. And when I would shadow people in the hospital and all these incredible places, God bless them. You're going to see my son is literally pictured in the hospital there. They save lives, but they don't necessarily rebuild lives, right? They're the fire department. They put the fire out. But then after that, we have the brain damage, we have the injuries. What do we do to rebuild? And so I never could work in that world. So I shadowed a chiropractor, and he was just so joyful, and people were I was like, where am I? Like, people are happy to be here, and this is healthcare, and just these transformative stories. I had never even heard of it in my life. So I signed up to become a chiropractor before I was ever even a patient. And then in my junior year of college, I go to start getting adjusted. Farm kid, baseball, football, all the stupid stuff. And I had this chronic shoulder pain and elbow issues. And guess what? They got better. So I decided I would sign up and help people with that. Now that was you'll hear this term in a second, subluxation-based chiropractor, but he didn't really talk about the nervous system. He didn't work on TBI and tough neurological and autism and epilepsy like I do now. So I thought my path would be the standard chiropractic path, go to school. I'm studying sports injuries. I'm studying soft tissue, but I got married. Met my beautiful wife there. I bought the ring after 2 months and proposed after 5, just not trying to not let her out of the whole thing. Raging bull move before she wised up. And so we go through and we have our first beautiful baby, not pictured, is our oldest girl, Addison. And through the transformative experience of becoming a parent, I decided to become a pediatric chiropractor. So 2 weeks before I graduated, so I have this whole plan, sports injury clinic, regular chiropractic clinic, probably what most of y'all think of chiropractic, that was going to be me. And it's awesome. Better to get adjusted than opioids and surgery and everything else. But it's not this. It's not what your families need to know. So I actually had my spark into pediatric chiropractic obsession by studying health, by studying optimal outcomes. What does it look like when birth is wonderful and latching is wonderful and nursing is wonderful and nutrition is wonderful? And that's Addison's beginning. And then on Memorial Day of 2009, this little dude showed up 6 weeks early. By the time the way he was delivered, my wife, first birth, very, very natural. I always like to make this joke to lighten the mood because it's talking about my little buddy. But my wife is a first generation Croatian Chicago immigrant with 3 hockey playing brothers. And I'm deathly afraid of my wife in all of the best ways. Okay. She is the boss that runs everything. She delivered Oliver on all fours on the bed. And the way that midwife worked, she had Christina really wait before she pushed. Well, Oliver, again, early-ish, 5-6 weeks early. And he shot out on the very first push. So head and neck every time I tell the story, it's still crazy to say it out loud. My wife's on all fours. I'm on one side of the bed, the midwife, the doula, the whole team is on the other side. And I watch Oliver shoot out like a rocket, not caught because the midwife didn't expect him to come out on one push. And I watched Oliver have a whiplash, hypoxic, what I now would describe, because it was, a hypoxic brainstem injury from birth. What I skipped over in the story so far is so I started practice 2007. This was 2009. because I signed up to get a certification in pediatrics back in 2008, autism wasn't a big deal. If you just said sensory processing disorder to 100 people, only one OT, if you happen to have one of them be an OT, they would have known what that is. But I'm a neuroscience nerd. And when I started to study it, I realized two things. Oh my goodness, these families need help. They have no answers, and they're dealing with all these neurological struggles. I had learned that chiropractic was about the nervous system and the spine is just our conduit. And then I knew that I just needed to serve. I just am wired that way. It's my farm. So I signed up to go on the board for what's called options and advocacy and early intervention and special needs. And I showed up to every walk, and I showed up to every parade, and I showed up to every meeting, and I just got to meet parents. And like, I'm like, how can I help? And I started to study neurologically focused chiropractic from a brainstem injury standpoint. And then God knew what he was doing with my life and the storm we would go through so that I could be there to pull Oliver to the other side of it and then live there for my entire career to help other families as well. Because I was the first person really in chiropractic to laser focus on birth interventions and brainstem injuries from things like forceps and vacuum, induction, and emergency C-section. So I'm trying to tell a brief, but I really want to set the table too as to where this science we're going to teach came from. It actually came from my experience as a parent first, needing to know the answers, and then the provider kicked in as well. And so with Oliver having that brainstem injury, I did not say out loud in my head the 30 slides you're going to learn today when we get into diascisis and disafferentation, the amygdala and the cerebellum and the dorsal horn and proprioception and all these things we're going to talk about here. But I literally took Oliver, cord still attached, turned my wife around, put him on her lap, made his first neurologically focused chiropractic adjustment. That actually kicked the fluid out of his lungs. And it's not pictured here. We didn't have pictures of that. But that picture on the top left is me making one of his adjustments on the very first day of life. I was adjusting him, and you'll learn this science before we're done. I was pumping oxygen into his brain. I was pumping parasympathetics and vagal nerve tone into his brain. I had studied the science for restoration and rehabilitation later on. But in the minute of the emergency, all I knew what God had taught me to do and be. And I started to adjust him right out of the gates. And so he went from 2 days at one hospital. So they life flighted him to that hospital. He had a hypoxic brain injury. Thankfully, my wife did not see this. I did. I'll never unsee it. I watched him have a seizure when we got to the first hospital. So within about an hour of life. And so they took him from that hospital in a helicopter to another. Then 2 days there, full oxygen blast, full everything they could, pulmonary hypertension, hypoxic brain injury, trying to get him to turn around with his oxygen, and he wouldn't. So they transferred us to Lutheran General in Chicago, and he had what's called ECMO procedure, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, all right? They thought he'd be on that machine for 14 to 20 days and maybe never come off of it. His brain injury was so bad. And Oliver came off that machine in 5.5 days. They told us that and we could see it, his EEG showed the worst burst depression seizures, his MRI, literally, and I'm trained in all these things to read these, and you could actually see the brain damage on there. I got to get to the science, as I keep promising. Oliver left the NICU 6 weeks later with a perfect EEG, no seizures, off all of his medications, and the MRI, his brain fully healed. And you could see the pre and post images. And I sat there with a neurologist who I had literally been teaching what I'm about to teach you for 6 weeks. I talk fast, I talk a lot. They had 6 weeks. And I said, this is going to happen. We're going to adjust him 2 to 3 times a day. We worked on his nutrition, and I'll get into all that. And I had been explaining to those neurologists, Harvard trained, that sounds expensive, to all of this. And I literally said, this is what's going to happen, because I had the chance to start right from the beginning. And they called it spontaneous recovery. You ever know those words, idiopathic? Sounds like another word, doesn't it? Starts with the same 4 letters, right? And so I just lived in that same hospital neurologist. They told us he's got a 20% chance of living to age 1. And if he lives past 1, he's got a 99% chance of cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy. Here's all your medications. Prepare now. And why'd they say 99%? Because it would have sounded awful to say 100%. But that's what they meant. And I am exactly like each one of you. I said, understood, thank you for saving my child's life, but no thank you to that outcome. Yeah. No thanks. I remember walking the halls and seeing all the stories and being inspired by them and then doing everything I could to maximize my child's healing from the beginning. And thank God, truly, that he put me down the path of being a nerdy, neurologically focused chiropractor first so I could install those things and get after them. And there's Oliver today. So, Oliver, so the reason, and I got to make sure, actually, I want to put this up. I can't stay to do the Q&A and jam with you. I can stay through lunch. I'm going to teach you as much as I can, but I promise I'm going to probably have you. You're going to have more questions and want to know more about this. So I put this early. I usually put this at the end, but it's Oliver's fault that I have to fly home here tonight. I'm going to throw Oliver under the bus. He's not with us, okay? And he has 3 sisters. So he's they're 18, 14, and 11. So Oliver has the most calm, regulated nervous system in life because he's been adjusted a lot. And what choice does he have with 3 sisters anyways, other than to just go with the flow? But it's cross-country season, and Oliver now, a hypoxic, ECMO, brain injury child, runs a 440 mile. And so tomorrow is cross-country. It is now playoffs and sectionals and everything else. So I'm going to be home tonight so I can wake up bright and early tomorrow. I won't do it now and yell, "Go, Oliver, go!" Okay. I'm a bit of a yelling parent, in case that surprises no one, right? So we do Q&A episodes. We have so much information. I want to help each and every single one of your families individually. I love doing lectures, and I despise it too because I have to be so 30,000-foot view versus like, tell me about your kiddo, tell me what you're going through, tell me what the goals are. I do my job best individually. Every Friday we do Q&A episodes. The website that'll also give you every podcast episode has an article linked. We've got articles. I love to talk. I love to teach. I love to write. And so we've got a lot of articles that probably individually could help your family. We serve miracles. Megan and Levi, top left. Levi, the legend, is the first kiddo. I guess Oliver was my first intensive without ever knowing I was doing one. And now we have a full family practice clinic, and we do take in intensives every single month as well. And those 2 moms, top right is Megan and Miracle Harper. She wasn't supposed to make it till 2, and we got to live life with Harper till she was 8. And Caden wasn't supposed to make it till 1, and we got to live life with Caden for many years, and that's Crystal. And they all work alongside of us to serve your families. So our goals are to break down these 3 things. What is that hierarchy? What is the foundation? What moves the needle most? Number 2, hard, but so important to know why more isn't always better until we figure out, number 1, what is most important. We do more of that. You're going to see my language. You're going to be like, what did he say? I'll say it real fast 3 times over so it comes back around. And then how do we rebuild? How do we repair? Because the world is finally awesomely waking up to the nervous system. The conventional medical world blamed genetics, got us nowhere, right? Then we're learning a lot about gut health and the microbiome. And I know every single one of your families has changed your diet 57 times. You are keto, macro. You buy your own goats and you milk your own goats so you can have your own goat milk, okay? I have goats. They're annoying. Don't do it if you haven't yet, okay? Yes, if you have goats, you know. How do I resell these things on Facebook Marketplace? Okay, so that's our Dr. P and I have that. Donkeys, though, donkeys are amazing. Get donkeys. Nutrition, nothing. Okay, so I know how hard you've worked on restoring the gut and the microbiome and diet and detoxes and supplementation and neuroinflammation and everything else. There's something beneath that. There's something underneath of that the way God designed our children and all of us to function and heal is even more foundational and simple than that. Not in absence of that. Not in absence of that, but foundational to that. Here's the other thing, and I don't have it stated on the side, but here's the other thing I've learned to do over the last couple of years. Change the sequence of everything the family is doing when they get there. And sometimes what we do is we take these incredible, transformative, we will need them later interventions that you're already doing, and we save them for later when the brain and the nervous system are going to be more ready for them. So when I first started doing intensives, I didn't change a single thing with my patients. If they were doing at-home primitive reflex therapies, if they were taking all these supplements, if they were doing all these things, we did not intervene. We just got started, we had chiropractic, and we went into those waters along with all the other interventions. But what I'm really here to teach you today is chatting and talking with Megan. She's always been incredible about allowing, as so many families are, about Preston and allowing us to share these incredible stories. I was actually adjusting Levi one day after church, and I could just tell Megan, was just fried from 1, all the challenges Levi was going through, but 2, all the decision-making she was doing. have this list of all this information. Dr. P is exactly right. It's the best thing ever that we have access to the internet and these groups and all this information, but it can fry your brains too. Fry your brains figuring out what to do first, next, last, second, third, 17th, and how do I figure this all out at once? And I've always told my patients something I never did very well myself because I'm such a science guy. I've always said, listen to your mom gut. And I've always said, dads, listen to your wife. And I mean that pretty honestly on it, right? Like, no, just kidding. I'm one of us, so I love to throw us under the bus, but we're in that too. Just listen to your parent gut. And a lot of times at that point as a practitioner, at that point, I hadn't been because I was taking all these intakes and on page 1, kiddo's name information. Page 2, what have you tried? What's working? What's not? And then page 3, what is the challenge? You know, what are the conditions and challenges? What's changed in my career is not so much page 3. Unfortunately, we're seeing more kids with more challenges. It's changed some. What's changed is page 2. Page 2, what are you trying? It used to be filled with medications. It's way less than that now. I love the shaking of the heads. Our generation of parents has woken up and said, better health through chemistry ain't working. It's not working for this. We're not taking that path. We're going to save that for the last resort. We used to joke we should answer our phones, welcome to the last resort. We're now second. Now we have to change it. Welcome to the second to last resort. Okay. And I'm here to tell you that the options is all these things, but the order matters most. Now, so that's the old page 2. Now page 2 looks like this. All the supplements, all the homeopathics, all the interventions. Most of the time, and this is amazing. My presentation today is a little bit dicey because if it's like traditional world where we take sound bites, it's going to be, you miss the whole thing. All of those things that are going to detox, rebuild, resupport the microbiome, all the other, and then that's not even, those are the supplements for this kiddo that was coming from Scotland and is now healing. He's literally was level 3, nonverbal, wouldn't wear clothes, wouldn't go into, I made his first adjustment inside the rental car. And he's now going on vacation, wearing costume, words are coming alive. I mean, it doesn't include all the different therapies and neuromotor things he was doing. Now page 2 often is a PDF that needs to be attached, and here's all the things we're doing. And it just hit me on that Sunday after church adjustment with Levi and Megan, and I thought, you know what I probably need to do more is my gut tells me maybe we just need to hit pause on some of those things to clear room for more foundational healing. So a lot of you incredible families, just like Dr. P talked about, the learning to the results we're getting in our clinic isn't coming from us going to other conferences and seminars and reading books. I hunt those down like none other all day, every day. But it comes from you. It comes from your kids. It comes from being courageous enough to try and match your courage and say, hey, what if we try it this way? And I mean that word try. What if we try it this way? What if we do it different than the accepted way and we slow down to speed up and we maybe just reorganize our approach? And I'm here today to not teach you about the 152 things that you can do to get your kiddo to heal. But I know what God's calling for me is to focus really on the foundation. And then if your gut and your experiences in your child, if you leave this and you go, I wonder if we need to slow down to speed up, man, I want you to trust that gut instinct and work with your providers to figure that out. So back to sarcasm. Okay, I have like a shot clock in my head that every 10 minutes, if I get real serious, I'm telling Oliver a story, bam, joke, okay? This is how dads operate. We know this, right? Dads can be going through it, and then another dad makes fun of them, and we heal, okay? We heal through putting each other down. And don't worry about us, moms. We're fine, all right? That's how idiots take care of each other, okay? See, I'm doing this, and we're healing together. So if you haven't watched Talladega Nights, well, then my lecture will not really be too helpful. But it's after Ricky Bobby wins his first race that gets interviewed. What do I do with my hands? It's not just parents who get stuck there. It's providers too. We're doing all these things. How come we're not breaking through? A lot of times we just need to slow down to speed up. So let's get a little extra nerdy here. This chart, now you're dealing with my handwriting. Probably the worst thing a doctor is supposed to do is put a picture up of their own iPad drawing. I did my best with that one. And so the truth is, that little basic triangle, there's a lot fancier versions of it that you'll hear and see when you go into occupational therapy and neuroplasticity and the advanced ones we need too. But we need to simplify this for us as providers and for you as parents. When we look at how the brains are built, by design, by God. They are built with the nervous system developing first. So we're going to go through development because that's healing. Neurological healing needs to take the same path and the same sequence as neurological development did. In chiropractic, this has actually been written about for 100. If you were to read the chiropractic textbooks from 100 years ago, the early 1900s, you would literally think you're reading neuroplasticity research that just came out today, because the world has been so stuck on chemistry and pharmaceuticals. Then we went to nutrition and diet and supplementation. And it's really been about the brain and the nervous system the whole time, because the nervous system controls the gut. It controls assimilation. It controls inflammation. It controls everything. So if we don't get the nervous system under control, we're not going to get the gut under control. We're not going to get inflammation under control. We're not going to get the motor system under control. So back on track with this, we know that it's called retracing. So they called it retracing back in the day. We call it neurological reorganization and repair to get to regulation. And what we know is that the very first thing to develop in utero is the brain stem, so the bottom and the back of the brain, and then the neural tube. So the central and the autonomic nervous system develops first embryologically once life begins in utero, and then everything's going to grow from that. Then the heart, then the lungs, then the muscles, then the skeleton. So the central nervous system needs to develop first because it's going to control and coordinate everything after that. Well, then if we kick off of that from embryology and we look at neurodevelopment, motor milestones matter massively to brain development. Even a conventional pediatrician knows this. Even they have the proverbial charts, in their office. Did you know that they took crawling off the CDC recommended motor milestones altogether during COVID because it was already getting so bad? And then they were just like, well, we can't figure out why it's that. They do know, and they just don't want to admit it. So I don't want to think about that. But they do know what's up. And so they just said, well, instead of fixing it and making sure that we know brains are built bottom up, back, forward, and then they connect the two hemispheres from that direction, well, crawling is essential. So the motor system. So the neuromotor system is next in foundation. If I had more room and I take this basic and we start going nerdier with it, it's really the neurosensory, that sensory demand, that sensory input triggers everything within the body, right? So the motor system, then the gut and the immune. What is the gut? It's a muscle. The esophagus is a muscle. The stomach's a muscle. The small intestine is a muscle. How does the immune system work? Respiratory, lymphatic, drainage, motility. So our immune system is very important on immunoglobulins and cytokines and everything else. But our immune system, back to my Iowa farmer upbringing, really just relies on plumbing. And when your child has a completely sympathetic dominant, locked in sympathetic dominant nervous system, they then have neurospasticity and asymmetry, primarily upper cervical, CT junction, upper thoracic, and through this where scoliosis comes in, and the whole neurospinal system gets like this. How are the ears, the sinuses, the lungs, the esophagus, the intestines, the colon, how are they supposed to drain and move fluid and mucus and poop and food out if they can't move at all? Because it's not just it's not just spasticity and asymmetry and tension. If you have if you have spasticity and tension and hypertonic muscles, the body goes through compensations, and it has hypotonic, weakened, shut down muscles. So we need some to move, to relax and get out of the way and let the ears and the gut and everything drain. And then we need others to turn on and activate and get rid of it. Well, if these are stuck and these are shut down, the gut and the immune system, even with perfect nutrition and supplementation and detoxification and you name it, we're literally trying to, throw a water balloon at a big old forest fire, okay? And then the brain does what all three layers below that tell it to do, okay? The brain works for the body. And so if we're trying to calm the brain, we need to get the body to chill out. If we're trying to connect the brain, we need to get the body to be better connected. And all of that runs through the nervous system. So what I put together in 2008, and there's another slide coming up here in a second, but this is the shorthand version of it. I put together a workshop for parents of kids with autism, and I did it. So the first time I ever delivered the Perfect Storm workshop, I had there was no clinical protocols established in chiropractic about this. There was no real specialties about it. But thankfully, God made me short man syndrome, raging bull, and I was the only way to know is to go. to just serve families, step up, serve, and figure it out as we go. So we've been farming this together, and I delivered the first ever Perfect Storm workshop in 2008 to parents with children with autism and epilepsy, and then ADHD, and then a cerebral palsy support group. So every other chiropractor is like, let's talk about sports injuries and rehab. And I'm like, let's have a cerebral palsy and epilepsy conversation, see how it goes. And I was a year into practice, and I looked like I was 4. All right. But don't worry. I tucked in my shirt back in, wore a tie, Tyson. So I looked real professional, and I had curly hair. Nobody will believe that. Where's my man T with that hair? Yeah, right over there. So, sorry, Amari, that hair. No, I didn't have that hair. That hair is glorious. I never got to that stage of hair. But I delivered this workshop, and I'll never forget the first 3 or 4 that I did for the most courageous, incredible, all in, whatever it takes parents, like the incredible ones with me here today. And they said, thanks for putting that together, because we had this feeling that all of that stress during the pregnancy might have been related. When they grab a hold of a forceps, vacuum, or a big set of hands and yank and twist a child into the world, then there's obviously this conversation, every antibiotic, every inhaler, every trigger of inflammation, and then this. And also in this world, we can also look at this and say, okay, where does that trauma, where did that injury, where did that accident really set up shop first? And traditionally, those physically traumatic injuries, they really shut down that system. And so this development, whether we're getting it to work great from the beginning, or we're going to go back to the beginning and try and get it healing and recovering and repairing, we have to start from the bottom floor up. We've got to work on the sensory motor system even before these other components. And the brain gets better last. And it gets better, so much better, when we have everything else working together, okay? So generally when I'm talking about this stuff, we're talking about it from a maternal distress and birth trauma, but it's the same neurology, even with hypoxic injury and near fatal. It still sets up shop within the system in the same sequence. So this is some of the research from that. This is actually talking about the other question to ask for your kiddos and for your children is, what was the status of their nervous system prior to? What if there was stress on there already? Do we have to even dig deeper than when we get to healing and get after it? Because what we know now with the high rates of stress and intervention, so now we don't celebrate women being pregnant. We diagnose them as such and do all these other sort of things. But maternal distress is something that showed up in the literature a lot as a neurological challenge, where what actually happens is a lot of our kids are being born with a vagus nerve, which is our rest, detoxification, regulation, socialization, communication, neuromotor coordination. The vagus nerve is the boss. If there's one thing that I want you to Google the heck out of, it's the vagus nerve, okay? You know, other doctors are like, where'd you learn that? And I'm like, where'd you learn that? Send me the link. I'm a different kind of doctor. I'm like, Google's great. You tried Perplexity and ChatGPT and all these, and Claude? Anybody flirting with AI here? Come on, dads. I know you're on there, right? And so we can find answers. I've always been that doctor. I'm so mystified. Okay, quick 30-second tangent. Promise. Start the clock. I've always been mystified. I've been practicing same county, same town for 18 years. We have kids who had seizures, now they don't. We have kids who are nonverbal autism, now they're talking. You'd never know if you didn't have the case history. We have kids with ear infections who had tubes and now they don't. And if I am a doctor whose head is not, if my occiput isn't lodged in my sacrum, that's an anatomical way of keeping it clean in church, okay? And a mom walks up to me and says, hey, we tried fill in the blank, and my kid's better. I am getting every bit of information. All of a sudden, now the tables are turning, and I have questions for you. Tell me everything you know about fill in the blank. Where'd you learn? I do not care what it is that fill in the blank, just that the kid gets better. And you have this conventional medical system that when you and I and all of us like this walk in and say to our conventional folks, hey, we're doing this, and we're doing photomodulation, it's getting better. We're doing supplementation, it's getting better. We're doing chiropractic, and it's getting better. What do they say? Be careful. There's no research behind that. Right? Okay. 1988. It's like talking to a Trans Am. I don't. Okay, I'm trying to think of Texas jokes here. And then the mullet came back, so I can't use that joke anymore to talk about outdated. But I'm like, who flew you here? Marty McFly and Doc and the DeLorean? Okay, that one is there. So So when we look at this, we've known this research for a long time. And when I say we, I mean people who are cutting edge neural practitioners, parents, and then maybe one day they'll pick up where we are. So we know that the vagus nerve is essential to getting life ready to adapt, ready to be plastic. If we are born into a sympathetic dominant state, and then injury comes on top of that, that's more layers of sympathetic dominance. And so there's a quick review of the perfect storm. And what I want you to know is those first two are what we see 60 to 80% of the case, 80 to 90% of the cases. So we see either high stress pregnancy or we see birth interventions. And in this room, I can state what is clear, and you kind of got to dance. I'm not a dancer, so I don't dance around a dang thing, but that's traumatic brainstem injury, okay? Birth trauma, and I'm going to go through the slides next, it's literal, physical, neurosensory motor injury to the most delicate region of the brain and nervous system. We're going to skip the videos today, but it's relatable. So, and I'm bringing this up because I know that not every one of your kiddos, it wasn't the stressful pregnancy, it wasn't the birth trauma, it's something else. But that kind of neuromotor, neurosensory, hypoxic brainstem trauma sets up shop the same, even with these other accidents. That's what we've now figured out. So we can use the clinical protocols that we figured out from birth trauma cases to heal TBI and everything else, and it's working incredibly. And so what we know is it's this simple. I always teach parents this about it. So if you got a brand new baby and baby comes out, we know that motor milestones are essential to the brain. Everybody knows that the brainstem and the neck are essential to health. We don't say it that way, but we just know it innately. So if you got the brand new baby and you're going to hand them to your little brother who's never handled a baby before, what do you say? Hold the head, hold the neck, hold the head, right? So why is it okay that we grab hold of the head and neck, yank and twist and pull kids in the world, and then say, don't worry, they'll grow out of it? See, they don't grow out of it. They start with difficulty latching, nursing, and if you can't latch and you can't nurse and you can't swallow and you can't digest, so it's reflux medicine comes up with all these, diagnoses or catch-all. Not only does that interfere with the nutrition, Dr. P was talking about that, but most importantly, neurologically, it interferes with co-regulation because mom's nervous system is baby's nervous system. And so it's that connection that is there. So you get a neurological challenge, you get a nutritional challenge, and now the perfect storm begins. And what you'll see as we look at these slides is these are just different diagnoses, different conditions that the medical system, the pediatrician says, don't worry, they'll grow out of it. They don't. They grow into chronic ear infections, constipation, eczema, sensory challenges, motor delays, speech delays, neurodevelopmental challenges. They grow into different diagnoses, but the conventional medical system just keeps referring to a different specialist in a different department, and no one actually gets to the root cause. But a distressed, dysregulated, imbalanced nervous system is the root cause of all of these, no matter the age and no matter the sequence. So the diagnoses change, the challenges layer on, and they become more and they become worse. Dr. P had a great slide about neuroplasticity can either be good or not good. That's the not good projection of it. Okay, that's where the nervous system gets locked into fight or flight. And the reason we call it the perfect storm is because the neurophysiological condition continues to program for more storm. And then a parent gets further and further buried because it's like, oh, well, that's chemical imbalance and genetic, right? And that's autism. We don't know what causes it, right? And so nobody comes back and says, what if it all triggered here from the beginning? So we're going to skip those two. And we're going to talk about how similar these traumas are to the neck and to the nervous system. And so what's changed rapidly in just a generation or two, definitely not our genetics, takes thousands of years. Our environment, epigenetics, that's a totally Googleable search term as well. Our environment very much shapes our genetic expression. And what's changed is, yes, there's more processed foods and toxins in a lot of ways than ever before. But I'm kind of, I like to shake the nest a little bit when I teach stuff. Toxins aren't brand new. Our grandparents had lead paint, asbestos, and secondhand smoke to go with their Fruity Pebbles for breakfast, okay? And so I'm saying it in my way, but we have this world where the conventional medical world has said it's all genetics, there's nothing you could do about it, and you knew the whole time that's not the whole story, so you're here and you're everywhere searching answers. But then you get into the natural health holistic world, and we blame toxins, and we get into that, and they are a part of the problem. I'm not pulling them out of the pie, but they haven't changed that much over time to really explain for this chronic rise in neurodevelopmental disorders. It's not just toxins. It's our inability to adapt to them, to detox from them, to regulate from them. Where does that start? This is where every time I get to this part of teaching, I wish I could now have 10 slides, 10 screens, because I want to keep the neurohierarchy slide up. If we realize where the injury sets up shop first and how much that neuromotor system controls gut, immune, and endocrine, absorption, elimination, detoxification, and brain function, then we can start to see where all of this makes sense. So, if I haven't said nerdy terms yet, here we go. And again, I love it. You don't have to know these terms. The after the dash is what's important. So subluxation. Subluxation is the $100 chiropractic word that when you hear me say it, it means all these things and more. So subluxation has, as the nerd docs at the back know, what we're about to release what's called the 14D model. I take it easy on them right now. It's actually only 10. There's only 7 on the screen. So there's these different terms that come from this neuromotor subluxation. At its basic core, subluxation is the neurospinal system. It can affect any joint, but the ones in the spine are the most important because the brainstem, the spinal cord, the dorsal horn, it's all in there, right? That is how God designed us. It's that literal conduit between the brain and the body. People talk about the gut-brain connection. Guess what that goes through? The neurospinal system and the vagus nerve, okay? So the motor system all has to come through that. Everything has to come through the spinal cord, through the cervical spine, the brainstem, the back of the brain, and forward. Subluxation of vertebrae, therefore, is way worse. And in its basic Iowa termination, it starts with dyskinesia. So what happens is when those joints become out of alignment, they become fixated. Imagine we take one of the doors in the back of the room and we bend the frame. It's out of alignment. How does the door move? Not smooth, not well, right? So that's called dyskinesia in Nerdville. The moment you have abnormal alignment and tension, and it can come from physical injury or it can come from hypoxic injury that causes spasticity and asymmetry. So not every trigger, even though it looks like it's going to start structurally and it's going to start physically, the injury doesn't need to start physically. Stress shows up in the physical, somatic, neurostructural system. Moms, dads, bad, stressful, crazy day. What's your neck feel like? What's your shoulders feel like? You didn't have an injury. You didn't get whiplash. You didn't fall on your head. But that emotional stress. You're traveling. You're staying at a hotel. You go down to the hotel tonight. You're like, they have margaritas here. I'm having 2 margaritas. You're not 24 anymore. How's your neck feel for the next 6 weeks? You thought I was going to say a day, but in your 40s, it's about a 6-week healing crisis, okay, from the second margarita. So toxins, everything sets up shop physically. You with me on that? And then this cascade kicks in. No matter how the trauma comes in, this is the sequence of how the body stores it. That's what I want you to know. So dyskinesia leads to disafferentation. That's abnormal sensory input. Neuromotor, most important system. It then shifts the system into sympathetic dominance. Dysautonomia, dysregulation, they're close cousins. They kind of mean the same thing. That then leads to dysfunction of every other system downstream. Dyskinesis is the abnormal output, and dystonia, too much or too little. And developmental dyskinesis, this is another nerdy one here. This is a term in Latin. It means that the system is shocked throughout. When the nervous system gets injured, wherever that injury primary sets up shop, dyskinesis means the effect of the injury might be somewhere else in the brain and the nervous system. This is why conventional neurologists are so not helpful to your family, because if it's not sticking out like a sore thumb on an MRI with a flashing red light and saying there's the problem, they don't know what to do. And even if they find it, what are they going to do with it? How are they going to restore it? Because the brain is doing, so the injury can literally happen in the neck and the neurospinal system, and the brain is affected. And then this one, I added this one especially to talk about here. There's so much to this, and again, it would take us 14 hours to go through all of it. But once you have that dyskinesia, disafferentation, dysautonomia to the neuromotor system, what happens is you have that spasticity. The worst place is literally right suboccipital, cervical, and thoracics. Your kiddos live stuck here, right? They have all their shoulders are attached to their ears. Everything is asymmetrical. They can't relax. They can't get things going. If you can't get things relaxed in this upper third to 2/3 of the neurospinal system, you actually limit what's called saturation, CSF flow, and even oxygenation into the brainstem and into the cord. So it's never been categorized this way until we developed this understanding of the neuroscience of subluxation. and until we develop the protocols with which we adjust this. But neurologically focused, what we call neurotonal adjusting, is oxygenation into the brain. We can literally now, chiropractors have been doing these studies, upper cervical chiropractors with functional MRI and similar brain scans that you see in HBOT world and in stem cell world. We now know that a chiropractic adjustment increases CSF flow and oxygenation into the brain because the body's been trying to get it in there. It's literally just obstructed. Okay. So especially what I'm running out of time, but what I want you to see is that this isn't actually fully just a conversation about how powerful chiropractic adjustments are. They got to be done right protocols, right sequence, right training. So that's where PX Docs, you can stop by our booth and figure out it's a totally different kind of, this is not back to I love 90s movies. It's not chiropractor in a van down by the river. Okay. That's what I would have felt like if I put my jacket on, by the way, like, fat guy in a little coat. Okay. I'm a husky guy. So in this training gets through it. You get oxygen in, you get afferentation in, you get proprioception in. Anybody been adjusted before? And yes, physically you feel great, but mentally, emotionally, you feel calm, you feel connected, you feel regulated. Man, if that's great for us as parents, imagine how bad our kiddos who just can't get there at all experience that. So you get oxygen in, you get CSF in, and then hang with this. This is so cool. I promise you're going to hear more about this over the next 5 to 10 years. As our profession, osteopaths work on this as well. They're doing some good research. They got a little more access to money because they're, in the medical world than chiropractors do. But you also get metabolic waste out. We not only need to stimulate the brain through these adjustments and therapies, through adjustments, afferentation, proprioception, and oxygenation, we also need to get the brain to detox, because it was injured. So what I know is happening for Oliver, he's 16, little chump. So 16 years ago when I was adjusting Oliver, I had understood this neuroscience enough to know vagus nerve, parasympathetic, and I knew proprioception and mechanoreception. That's why movement-based therapies are so effective. I knew that as I was adjusting him, I was stimulating his brain in a way that would surge the parasympathetics, which is how you shut down the sympathetics. What I didn't know is I was able to also help him detox from the damage that was actually there on the MRI. That first MRI wasn't wrong. It was there, but that brain can heal. The only thing that's wrong in the medical, neurological, outdated 1988 world is their interpretation of what's possible, not what's on the image, okay? Brains absolutely, positively can heal. The bigger the challenge and the injury, the longer it's been there, the more work we got to do, the more intensive, the more foundational, the more structural we need to be in that. And it literally comes back to this. So what does healing look like over our last couple of minutes? We are a completely different practitioner, and this is so much easier for us than parents. I know when Oliver when he had those seizures, every single stinking day, it's hard for me not to swear, good thing we're in a church, every single son of a gun day, I wanted those seizures gone. Thankfully, I knew how healing works in this way. So what we were obsessed with was his sleep, his breathing, his pooping, and his moving. We call those neurological soft signs. And these are often in the neurorehabilitation and healing world, these are the forgotten trump cards of brain-based healing. We often get so excited to get to work on the brain that we forget that the brain works for the body and the body can't do any of these things well. So the brain's not going to do very well with what we're asking it to do when we're blasting it and trying to reset it. And so when we start to see these soft signs for our patients, we throw the biggest parties. We see the biggest changes because when they're sleeping, neuroplasticity, healing and recovery. When they're pooping, detoxification, elimination, parasympathetic surges. When they're breathing, that could easily say respiratory, immune function. Now we're oxygenating. Now, when their neuromotor tone is more relaxed where it needs to, so we have certain adjustments. I just have a minute or two, and I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time for your lunch and everything else. There's certain adjustments. When you go to a PX doctor, we use a multitude of chiropractic techniques. If a chiropractor uses a singular technique, that's limiting. Patients need different things based upon what they need. And so certain adjustments look like nothing's happening. It looks like you're checking an avocado and you're unwinding this pent-up tension. We can do it while they're in the chair. We can do it in the hospital. I literally was adjusting Oliver while he was on ECMO. And they didn't even know I was doing it. Just praying. Back to the youth pastor. Praying parasympathetically. That's how I pray, okay? It's like vagus nerve on a knee. Here we go, all right? And so what happened is you have some adjustments, and I'm going to close with Oliver's story of how we did it, and it's exactly how every kid needs to be adjusted. They need both. So you have some adjustments that take those hyperspastic, wound up, asymmetrical. Anytime you have asymmetry, you have spasticity. The brain hates asymmetry. The brain loves balance, okay? Most injuries are asymmetrical, right? They came from one side, one function. So you have to get rid of asymmetry to get rid of that tension. And some adjustments are very light force, very tonal, and they don't look like anything's happening, but you just need that system to unwind. Traditionally, those tonal adjustments are happening at the top and the bottom, and we're unwinding from there. Then, if you have hypertonicity, you have hypotonicity. So other adjustments, we need to get a hold of your beautiful kiddos and get them adjusted. And we do. So we need to take areas of like oxygenation and digestion, what are called the transition zones. And we need to get in there. We need to do neuromyofascial release. We need to get rid of the soft tissue adhesions. Chiropractors do cranial work. We do airway work. We do fascial work. I was joking with some mom earlier. If you went on our website and you're like, what do you guys all do? It would just keep unrolling. You just have like 87 pages of everything that PX doctors do. And so other adjustments need stimulation. They need activation to where the nervous system is suppressed. These calm the nervous system where it needs to. These activate the nervous system where it's exhausted. So as Oliver healed, I could literally, and it was so cool, the nurses would come around, and I'll close with this, because this is what's possible. And I got to cheat. Oliver got to cheat. His dad was a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractor, but healing is possible at every stage of the journey. Okay, we will fight. I will travel the world and pray on my knees every single morning to God to give me the places where I can go teach doctors and parents first, other providers. And one day we'll be in those hospitals for every child saying, hey, you saved their life, we'll restore it. Let's work together. That's where I was with Oliver. It was so hard for me to be in the NICU and see those other kids not get what I knew he was getting. But what was amazing, and it happens no matter where you're at in the stage, when he was hooked up to the monitors, and I would make a parasympathetic vagal nerve, parasympathetic stimulating adjustment, his pulse ox would drop to 80, 82, 84. He was hypoxic, right? PPHN, ECMO. I would make adjustments that looked like I just had my hands on him, right? Just praying. What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Having a great day? To the doctors, because they were like clueless. And so his pulse ox would shoot up, 95, 98, 99. His heart rate would come down. His respiration rate, autonomic improvement while my hands were on him. And then after we calmed his nervous system and cleared, then he couldn't eat, then he couldn't digest, then he couldn't poop, so they wouldn't let us leave, right? So what we did is we made adjustments to activate and stimulate his digestion and his oxygenation, and he started to take breaths on his own, and he started to learn how to do these things on his own. And so Oliver started really early. So the other therapies, the PT, we did a lot of that. The OT, we did a lot of that. Nutrition, we were giving him breast milk, and we went and added. So we did everything, but we did it in sequence. And what I want you to know is, because the nervous system is the boss, if that system is both sympathetic dominant, this is the very last slide, I promise. And then I know you're getting hungry. For children who have neurological injury, they are all three of these things at the same time. Sympathetic dominant, vagus nerve shut down, neurologically disorganized, asymmetrical, confused, and then they become exhausted. They become shut down. You actually have to fix that bottom up too. You've got to activate the system, rebalance and regulate the system, then you can calm the system when a child is really in that injury. If you have a child who right now is in stage 3, neurological exhaustion, the therapies are going to be significantly limited in their benefit. Their ability to absorb nutrients from diet changes and supplementation, significantly limited. Their ability to detox, their ability to go through PT and hippotherapy, their ability to go through OT, their ability to go through neurointegrative visual oculomotor vestibular therapy. Why is a primitive reflex still there? Because subluxation is still there. A primitive reflex is a compensation for foundational neurological subluxation and tension. So when you get these things out of the way, everything else that needs to happen in aggregate, in sequence, to get your kid healing fully and get to the brain works 10 times better, 100 times better, 1,000 times better. The hardest thing is knowing which thing first in what order, and being able to have the providers who can work together in concert, in harmony, in sequence, and say, hey, baton here first, then there next, but not everybody trying to grab onto the baton at the same time and do all their work at the same time. Because if you have a completely sympathetic dominant, neurologically confused and exhausted system, it can only take in so much at one time, even if what it's taking in is good. So I'll close with this. You're the absolute, courageous, brilliant, unstoppable parents that God called to be your child's parents. You will find the answer. You will find the unlock. But it's not a key, it's a combination lock. Remember when your kids go to junior high, and you got to teach them, go to the right 3 times, and then the left 2 times, and then the right, and you just want to punch the lock right there. Just like, unlock! Oh, sorry, buddy. I got it. That's where you'd think I would know better after 18 years of taking care of sensory kids to chill out, maybe in my 20th year. And so you have to really oftentimes feel like the move is going to feel 3 paces backwards, and then it's 2 forward, and then it's going to need another backwards, and then it's going to be forward. But when you see healing neurologically that way, then you can have the confidence to say, we're doing things in the right sequence. The healing will happen from the inside out. And so there's technology and scans. I didn't have time to get to them today. We can track this objectively. We can track it with the neurosoft signs. And if you can see that your child's HRV, EMG, soft signs, nervous system function is getting better, you could have all sorts of confidence that their brain over time will too. And your kids will do all the things that all the other doctors told them they couldn't as well. And let's see if we got one more picture of Oliver, man. Actually, sorry, I'll leave you with that one. Then we'll go to lunch. Wherever you are, we have now trained over 1,000 doctors in these clinical protocols. It starts with the principles scientifically, and then it has to do with the protocols. So we are not everywhere yet, but God has been so good and so faithful to this mission for so long. I am so blessed to be here. I wish Oliver could have come with me and you could meet him, because he's our little prayer warrior, and I want you to know he's praying for your families too. And I'll be flying home tonight. When he runs, I can see the scars from his ECMO surgery almost all the time. And so he'll be like winning a race and I'm crying. And they're like, that is one emotional dad. And I'm like, you don't know the whole story. Extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, let's just give me a moment, you know? And so I believe in your kids. I believe in you. And I promise you, God's got this, you got this, and we got this together. Thank you, guys.